Hello and welcome to this virtual edition of the OC Forum. My name is Ariana Barrios, Executive Director of the Forum, and I'm so grateful you joined us today. This special limited series focuses on an issue that has been deeply impacting our Southern California community: immigration. Featuring voices from across Orange County, we will explore this issue in 3 parts: how we got here, where we are now, and what's next. Thank you so much for joining us. Following the unrest in downtown Los Angeles and Santa Ana, public opinion concerning mass deportations has been sliding steadily downward. Americans coast to coast have been feeding on a steady diet of disturbing images showing aggressive, masked, and heavily armed federal agents making dramatic arrests, raiding businesses, and chasing migrant farm workers in the fields. Citizen journalists and rapid response groups have steadfastly filmed incident after incident to raise awareness of what is happening across the country and in our own backyards.
¡Eh, por qué le pegas!
Since the beginning of June, when it was reported that a new quota had been set at 3,000 arrests per day of undocumented persons, concern has increasingly grown about the process by which these actions are carried out. Rumors of warrantless arrests, minimal if any due process, and questionable detainment conditions have all heightened a growing sense of unease, particularly in Latino-dominated neighborhoods and cities. A previously scheduled nationwide protest suddenly became ground zero for a coalescing of anti-administration sentiment and immigrant rights. On June 14, 2025, No King's Day became the single largest civil demonstration in America's history. So that leads us to ask, where are we now?
Congressman Correa reporting to you from the Downtown Civic Center, Santa Ana, California. I just took a tour of the ICE holding facility today, Friday, June 20th, about 7:15 a.m. I've been doing this now for a couple of weeks. Every day I come to tour the facility. As a member of Congress, it's my job. I have the authority to take a tour, inspect, review what's going on when it comes to taxpayer assets, but especially Homeland Security, ICE facilities. That is written in law. We have the authority and responsibility to see what's going on. What I've seen is this is not a holding, but rather kind of a transport place. Bring them in for a few hours, breakfast, bathroom break, what have you, then they move on to other places. Yesterday, I heard one of the ICE officers say, we have to have our agents masked because death threats to their families. Okay, but every police officer, every sheriff, National Guard behind me are in that same position. They're not wearing masks. I get threatened all the time. I'm not wearing a mask.
I worked in law enforcement as a probation officer for a long time, and 30 years, and I've served search warrants with law enforcement agencies. I've arrested people. I've taken people to jail. I've done a lot of things. I've worked in the gang unit doing gang suppression, starting at 2 in the afternoon until 4 in the morning, when it's a dangerous time, right? And I can say that our police officers, I never thought, because I've never seen officers behave that way.
In my experience and in my journey, I never thought I would see that on television. And I haven't seen it live, and I hope I don't, because I don't know what I'll do at that moment in time. I know my emotions may get the best of me, but no, I never thought it would actually happen. And maybe that's ignorant of me, and I can admit to that. However, it is happening in our community, just up the street from our office.
I can understand people being surprised because this hasn't been done in quite a long time, right? So the enforcement aspect, I understand that maybe people are taking it back in the ways that they're occurring. I think a lot of people are taken back by seeing kind of the clashes that we're seeing, but I would venture to say that I'm not too terribly surprised, and for a few reasons. Number one, the massiveness of how many illegal immigrants are in this country right now. But also, what we're seeing here in California, being a sanctuary state, if we could come to an agreement, right, where the governor or, Karen Bassamir of LA can come to an agreement where, listen, if this individual is a pedophile, if this individual is, a wife beater, if they've been convicted of something and they are sitting in a jail cell and they are set to be released, it seems pretty common sense to be able to very calmly go make that transfer, and that individual shouldn't be in this country, right? So, but when those things don't occur, that forces the federal government to go around and work outside of the city, of the state, out of local law enforcement. And so it looks messy. It looks very messy. Things get leaked, and then you have a mob of protesters outside waiting for those officers, chanting at them, throwing things, and then it becomes an even bigger mess.
If you commit some enumerated dangerous or violent crimes, you should be detained. You should be arrested, just like anybody should be, whether you're documented or not. But what we've seen, 70% of the people that have been abducted and detained don't have any criminal history. What does that say about us? And what do they say about the narrative that they were supposed to focus in on those dangerous folks who were committing horrible crimes, right? But that's not really the case. They're focusing in on people who are, low-hanging fruit, asylum seekers, people who are just trying to get through their court hearings and go to their interviews and check-ins. So that, to me, shows that there is a completely different path here. It had nothing to do with the original narrative.
On June 12th, Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem visited the federal building in Los Angeles, where she held a press conference for local media. In the same building was Senator Alex Padilla of California. Accompanied by an FBI escort, Padilla entered the media area and proceeded to interrupt the secretary's remarks. Padilla was immediately pushed back and restrained. He was led out of the room and then put on the ground and handcuffed. The extraordinary display of force against a sitting U.S. senator sent shockwaves through California's elected leadership.
If this is how this administration responds to a senator with a question, if this is how the Department of Homeland Security responds to a senator with a question, you can only imagine what they're doing to farm workers, to cooks, to day laborers out in the Los Angeles community and throughout California and throughout the country.
Orange County's Hispanic elected officials, already angered by the growing enforcement actions throughout their cities, were outraged by the tactics used against the senator, California's ranking Latino leader.
I know Alex well, and I can call him by his name because I knew him back when he wasn't a U.S. senator. It was heartbreaking to see because it's a symbol of what we're going through right now. If a person at his level can be treated that way, again, to his point, you can only imagine what a civilian or somebody who's just simply wanting to know, why are we doing this? Why are we spending millions of dollars really terrorizing communities? These are people that are trying to go to court, because I've been witnessing at Santa Ana Immigration Court, people who go to their hearings, their check-ins, and they're being summarily detained right after their cases are dismissed. These are people who are not trying to evade the law. They're not criminals. They're not dangerous. They're people following the path to citizenship, right? But that's going to be a difficult thing for those of us to claw back those protections, those constitutional protections, if we let them erode. If you can't go to court and simply comply and get detained immediately afterwards, that doesn't speak well of our society.
So for me, this is personal. I take being an elected official very seriously. Born and raised in Anaheim, and I have deep, deep roots in our city. It is important that all of the residents who live here know that they should feel safe and protected by the city that they live in. So for me, it's an opportunity to really just make sure that our residents have what they need. At this point, there's racial profiling occurring. It's not what they had originally intended for it to be. So anybody who is not of a certain descent is in jeopardy. And for me, that's not okay. So I will stand up and rise for the people who deserve to be protected in order to make sure that the injustice and due process is served.
The Home Depots are in my district. I'm pissed off. I think of the sacrifices that my mom and dad had to make to get here so I could be in a position of being elected to office It's thanks to them, thanks to immigrants, thanks to their sacrifice and their hard work. And I see that it's, you know, it even goes past immigration. Like, our democracy is under attack. Never in a million years did I think I'd see militarized vehicles from the United States military on our streets. I mean, it's frustrating because there isn't much as a local policymaker. My power is only, it goes so much. There's nothing, and it's frustrating that people look to me as in a position of power, and I'm completely helpless. You see United States senators getting detained. You're seeing threats of arrest to our California governor. It's like, what does that put a little council member from the city of Santa Ana? Like, that's the frustrating part, is that we're helpless.
You know, it's an unrecognizable landscape that I see outside my window, outside my front door where I live. I grew up on the streets of Santa Ana and right in the Civic Center, where I see military equipment, I see the National Guard, I see fatigues and machine guns. And there are kids that are there really scared because they've never seen anything like this. So it's a fearful moment, but it's also a moment for those of us who have voice to stand up on their behalf for those who feel too scared to speak.
I know sometimes the Republican position can sound a little cold-hearted. That is not lost on me. But I think, you know, what I would want people to understand is, you know, how do we address this issue in a way that, yes, is respectful of people, but also focuses on enforcement and having laws and creates a regular process for people to come into the United States. There are no winners in illegal immigration. The illegal immigrant is paid less. The illegal immigrant has less rights. The illegal immigrant is living a life in the shadows. And those people taking advantage of them would probably be the only winners in this situation. But, you know, municipalities, cities have to plan for these things. And, you know, there are no winners across the board. And so I think for our perspective, while sometimes, admittedly, it might sound cold and matter of fact, but the fact is we do have to have some sort of line in the sand where we're going to follow immigration laws on this. This is the way to come in. We will welcome you, but it has to be done in this procedure. And so that's, you know, what I think sometimes is lost in the argument. But, you know, it's not without empathy and understanding of the situation.
On the heels of No King's Day, things began to calm, and it appeared that the president's position was changing as agriculture, hospitality, and manufacturing industries began reporting worker shortages and the economic impacts were beginning to emerge.
Our farmers are being hurt badly by, you know, they have very good workers. They've worked for them for 20 years. They're not citizens, but they've turned out to be, you know, great. And we're going to have to do something about that. We can't take farmers and take all their people and send them back because they don't have maybe what they're supposed to have, maybe not.
And yet, despite these statements, raids have continued at an ever-increasing pace. Businesses throughout Southern California, and particularly in the heart of Orange County, began to feel the impacts across all sectors.
We have estimated by the SBA, or the Small Business Administration, about 30,000 Hispanic-owned businesses here in the county, which is quite significant. And we serve everybody. You come to us, we want to work with you. We're all about working with everybody and helping everybody. We realize as an organization, we need to be a leadership organization and we need to help everybody, because invariably you have kids in school that are Hispanic, your consumers are Hispanic, your employees are Hispanic. It's just, that's what it is. And we want to share our community with your community. You know, from talking to our business owners, what's happened, the raids and the kind of enforcement that we've seen has really impacted our businesses. We've seen businesses that basically have had to either shut down or shorten their hours just because there's not enough, you know, customers, especially in the Santa Ana region where, you know, there's been enforcement there. And then obviously the National Guard's there. So it's created kind of a little bit of an atmosphere where people don't want to go down there because they don't feel it's safe. That's, you know, part of the reason. And then you're just seeing, you know, either in you know, small companies, you're seeing the impact, but you're also seeing in large companies. So as I've talked to some of our larger retailers, and they're seeing quite a dramatic decrease in just foot traffic.
Well, the calls that we're getting are from businesses that are now like completely vacant. We're seeing schools where their summer programs are completely alone. Kids aren't going to those summer programs. They're not going to swim lessons. They're not going to camp. And we see that people now are being taken from their homes. We know that there have been 400 abductions, not detentions. There's been over 1,000 children separated from their parents. And those are things that really hurt us, even if it's not at a compassionate level, at an economic level. These are our workers. These are people who pick our fruits and vegetables. These are people who work in hospitality and work in construction. All this is going to hurt the economic development of the county. So we have to realize this has longer consequences.
And we're seeing it all over the place. There's certain, for lack of a better term, some places feel like a little bit of a ghost town. From a standpoint, people just aren't going out and going to restaurants or going, to car washes or Home Depot. I mean, there's just certain things that you're seeing people pull back on because of that, because of what they see in the news, right? And so we see that. We have one of our members who has a supplier that does work for them based out in Corona. They got raided. 15 of their people were taken away. And so that supplier is shut down so that our customer or our member is able to use that supplier for that purpose. So you're seeing those type of things, throughout our county and the county of Riverside, San Bernardino, LA County, obviously San Diego County. So it's all Southern California is being disrupted quite a bit.
It's hurting us. It really is hurting us. I've spoken to the downtown merchants, and I have friends that have businesses here, and where the National Guard is parked and where it's blocked off, nobody's going down there. And even in the areas that it's not blocked off, because they're afraid. So it's almost like COVID 2.0 again, right?
Yesterday, I met with a family whose breadwinner came close to being deported. I won't get specifics, but he said, I'm not leaving the house anymore. And you're gonna have a situation where all the kids are US citizens, the mom's US citizen, he's not, he's a breadwinner. So the whole economic situation is gonna be flipped upside down, but there's an employer that's gonna have one less worker. The 4%, as you said, tells us that we have a worker shortage. 6% is usually historical average unemployment. And when we have 4%, that means you have no workers. That's where these undocumented come in to take up the slack, to take up those jobs that are available. And if you start deporting people, you will definitely have a challenge.
A legitimate concern of where we find ourselves now is the appearance of racial profiling within the Hispanic community. Coupled with the tactics being used by federal agents, leaders from both sides feel a growing sense of tension that is being exacerbated daily.
I thought, at this point, he's backpedaling, and he should have stood with his original mission and gone after the individuals who truly, truly are not doing the right thing for our country. And I could be on board with that. But what he's doing is terrorizing communities. He's coming into parks, he's coming into our schools, into our restaurants, and making people feel uncomfortable in the city that they live in the state they live in, and that is not okay.
That's the type of conversation we need to have, that we both realize these are constitutional protections. This is, our democracy that we're trying to protect. And we can all agree that we need to tone down the volume, make sure that, those who are trying to protect us are trying to keep us safe, and those that are demonstrating, keep it as passive as we possibly can. Yell at the top of your voice. Don't damage anything.
I think what surprises me the most is how many, I serve on regional boards, as you have as well. And a lot of our friends on the other side of the aisle, their quietness. And you see them posting things at events, business as usual, but it's not business as usual. Our democracy is under attack. It's not just about immigration now. It's our entire being of us being elected to office. It's about them too. And unfortunately, they're blinded, they can't see it, I don't know, but that's what's frustrating, is that complacency.
On June 21st, Narisco Barranco, father of 3 U.S. Marines, was chased, pepper sprayed, and violently beaten by unidentified masked agents. There were no warrants. There was no apparent reason for him to be targeted other than his appearance, a gardener working outside and of Hispanic descent. We asked his son, retired U.S. Marine Staff Sergeant Alejandro Barranco, about what he sees in the horrific videos captured by witnesses.
I mean, from the training that I've received, at no point in time are we allowed to run with guns, with our fingers on the trigger. At no point are we supposed to put our finger on the trigger unless we're ready to fire. These agents were doing just that. They didn't have their weapons slung to their bodies. They didn't have holsters for their handguns. So it was just not professional at all. These guys are also pointing their weapons at the public. They are not prioritizing public safety at all. Yeah, he's just a super kind person, very hardworking. That's all he's known for. Everybody in our community has received some kind of help from him, whether it just be a conversation. He for sure always make you laugh. And he's just there for everyone. He tries to help out. If you ask him for work or say like, hey, like, do you have any work, any jobs, he'll definitely help you out. Yeah, he's just a very hardworking person. I definitely think he was racially profiled. Just the job he was working, the color of his skin. And my dad never committed any crime, so there was no reason to go after him. I'm pretty sure everyone would like to know why was he chased down? Why were guns pulled? Why was he attacked? It's just not right.
Thank you for joining the OC Forum for this special series on immigration. Our show notes will include a variety of resources, links, full-length interviews, and more for you to explore after each episode. We also invite you to join the conversation online, within our social channels, or through the blog on our website. The OC Forum welcomes all points of view on the topics that we cover and are dedicated to promoting respectful and civil discourse. We ask that if you decide to comment, you keep this in mind and respect the opinions of others. Thank you again for joining the conversation today.